Okay, so it's looking like we've got a few participants. I might just get started. Before we do, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting today through Zoom. Obviously, we're all meeting from various areas. However, I'm calling in from the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I would just like to pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Okay, so hello and welcome everybody. We've had an awesome amount of people jump on today. Thank you for joining us. I'm super excited. Today we will be discussing the ins and outs of student and graduate employment in the face of a COVID normal society while a raging recession is happening. So I'm joined by an incredible collection of Swinburne community members to make up our awesome panel who are going to share their expertise and tips with you. These guys are great, they're awesome. And I'll just introduce them now, just so we're all familiar. So we do have joining us today, Felicity Sowerbutts. Felicity is the director of the team at the Young Workers Centre, which is an organisation that supports young workers who want to learn more about their rights at work, or those in need of assistance in resolving any sort of workplace issues. They run an awesome organisation, so definitely do check them out. We have MARIANNE Buyskes-Abrahams and Rebecca Peachey. So they both work for the Careers and Employability team at Swinburne and are qualified career consultants. So their work consists of creating resources, running heaps of sessions and workshops for Swinburne students on how to best approach their career and job prospects. We've got OLIVIA Doyle, who also works with the Careers and Employability team doing similar work. However, her work primarily focuses on opportunities for the international student community at Swinburne. Lastly, the incredible Sean Gallagher, who is the director for the Centre of the New Workforce at Swinburne. So you might have heard of that. It's a research and analysis initiative that works towards discovering new approaches to learning in an ever-changing digital world. So Sean's thought-provoking work, I think, is relevant for all members of our increasingly digital workforce. So I'm definitely excited to have him on board today to inform our discussion, as I am with all of our panelists. So very exciting to be joined by you all today. Just before I hand over and just stop yakking on a bit, I'll just mention again, if there's anyone with questions about anything in general, or just one specifically from a member of our panel, there will be a question time at the end for us to chat. And if you have any questions that you want to bring up, you can switch on your microphone, you can switch on your video, you can say hello, or you can just put it in the chat and we'll be getting to them at the end. I think we'll get started. I think the first topic we should address is defining and actually outlining some of the challenges that COVID has created for businesses in the workforce, so that we can then talk about them in greater detail. So let's identify some challenges. I will hand this topic to Sean to have a chat about this.
Thanks very much, and welcome everyone. It's nice to be with you here on this somewhat gloomy Thursday, but nonetheless, it's getting towards the end of the year, and no doubt many of you are starting to think about what your role work-wise is going to look like. I think it's probably, I'll try to weave in some of the outcomes of from the budget last night. But let me put it in a broader context in terms of what's happened over the course of 2020, really. We're really in the unprecedented, is what I call it. As you know, it's a descriptor that is used all the time, but it's quite extraordinary. I did a Google search on the frequency of the word unprecedented, and it's more than doubled this year over any other year. So in many ways, everyone else is feeling it too. One of the things that it's quite clear that it's the global pandemic that has been driving a lot of the change and disruption that we're all experiencing. And there's been, untold a lot of trauma caused to families in terms of health, but also economically in terms of jobs and that. And it's probably, beyond the pandemic. We see, the headlines, pandemic is causing an economic recession. But what's behind it is that it's actually fastening and hastening an already supercharged digital disruption that's occurring across the economy. And, McKinsey, which is a consulting firm, just released some data in the last week or so. They surveyed 800 executives of global companies, and 85% of those companies have accelerated their digitization. What that means is, in terms of AI and automation gradually replacing a lot of human work, and as well as using digital technologies to better connect humans. So, we're in the midst of this, what many are calling the world's largest work from home experiment. And, it's some things for you to think about work and about the role of what you will do in the workplace. And, one of the things that it's demonstrated is that we no longer have to be in an office to be productive. We can be productive at home. In fact, many people will tell you that they're actually more productive not being in the office. So when you get into the office, I think a lot of workers are going to say, well, you're not going to drag me in here to sit in front of a computer to process email. I can do that from home. And in fact, I can do it much better from home. So what are you going to bring me in here to work with? And so that is really starting to get organizations to focus on, well, what's the purpose of the office? What's the role of humans in increasingly digital environments? And that really, I suppose, let me answer that on two levels. One, it's, coming to an office, I think, is going to be increasingly focused on creative, pursuits. So, bringing together a diverse grouping of humans to focus on collaborating on, solving complex problems. I think that is really going to start to take off. And when you think about the new normal, which is, previously, so the new normal being that everything is rapidly changing, it's chaotic, it's ambiguous, it's crazy out there. And, companies are no longer making decisions as to, do we tweak this product here or that service there? It's much more existential. It's like, what are we going to do to be able to open the doors tomorrow? And, certainly out of the US, a lot of companies are starting to think about how, instead of having a 12-month strategic planning session with, one of those offsites that you go to a fancy golf club or something like that with, senior execs, and sort of doing that once every year or so. Many companies now have a 21-day strategic review. And what that means is that every 21 days, the leadership team, but broader than that, right across the organization, they somehow come together and to take stock of where they're at as an organization. Is the strategic direction that they were going in over the last 21 days going to be the right direction for the next 21 days? So there's a lot of scenario planning. There's a lot of exploring different futures, really. This is quite extraordinary when you think about it. It's not, I go to work, I've got skills and capabilities, and I do a task, and it's measured by a unit of output. There's still, I'm not saying that's not going to disappear, but increasingly we're pivoting towards, this much more rapid, agile approach. And so what that means in terms of potential work opportunities for graduates right across the board is that I think companies want to de-risk. So they want to take out the risk of everything these days, not just because we're in a recession, but also because they don't know necessarily the direction of their future necessarily. And so one of the things that I've been looking at a lot is the gig workforce. And you would have seen in the most recent unemployment numbers, so there was an unexpected rise in employment, and it was basically through sole traders. They were gig workers. And one of the things that I think a lot of Australians don't necessarily appreciate is that gig and freelance work is quite, the prevalence in the Australian economy is quite wide. And I'm not just talking about Uber drivers and Airtasker and, Deliveroo. Certainly, leading into the pandemic, a lot of the work was very high level, sophisticated, and well paying. 7 out of 8 freelancers and gig workers in Australia have a higher education, and they're getting paid a lot of money. And I think that that's going to be part of the solution for companies to reconfigure themselves, to reorient, to take advantage of new opportunities in the post-COVID world, because they're going to need talent, but they aren't going to want to, okay, I'm going to hire you for, an ongoing contract or a 5-year contract and everything that goes with it. Companies are not in that. I'm not saying that the job is going to disappear, but increasingly non-traditional forms of work are going to increase and compete alongside the job. So think of ways in which you might be able to augment your opportunities to get into the workforce by thinking along those lines. So one last quick question. I think please, see where you can take advantage of, looking at, talking to employers with the fact that the government is now subsidizing young workers getting into work, $200 a week towards young workers who are working at least 20 hours a week. Talk to, I would actually be on the front foot in a lot of these cases and talk to, if there's an employer that you want to work with and say, hey, let's talk, how do we make this work? If I can work for you 20 hours a week and you can get a subsidy from the government to help me get in this position. So think about non-traditional ways to get into the workforce, I think is what you should be focusing on.
Awesome. Really good insight, Sean. Especially about that new subsidy. That's like such an opportunity there. And I think, a lot of young workers can definitely benefit from bringing that up with their employers. Got a good ground level now for our discussion. So we might next just have a look at what history has shown us about society amidst a recession and what this tends to mean for students and graduates, and then businesses eventually. So I think for this next talking point, we might go to Marianne. She's going to lead us in this conversation.
Thanks, Grace. Hi, everyone. So what I'll say will probably very much add on to what Sean's delivered, which are very, very valid points and things to consider. So what we know from previous recessions and previous times when the economy has downturned and the impact that that's had on young workers and students in particular is that even in a tightening job market, there are still opportunities for people to enter into professional roles. It could be that there are less roles that are available, and so therefore the competition is more, as in more people are competing for the roles. But history has also shown that there are opportunities available, and it's about looking more broadly about where those opportunities might be. So it may be, as Sean said, having a conversation with an employer that you would like to work at and talking about asking them about what opportunities might be available, what might you be able to do in order to get a position or experience with them, rather than just calling them and asking for a job. From a career development point of view, that is a strategy that we encourage students to utilise all the time, not just in times of recession, but it becomes even more important in a very competitive job market, that you don't rely simply on job boards, on online sites such as Seek or Indeed or Jora, and that you draw on your networks and your professional networks, and that you be proactive in your own job search, and that you actually go out there and approach employers directly, have conversations. I think it's really important to remember as well that people hire people. And so to do that, you need to make connections with people and get yourself out there. And I think as a student, that can be quite a scary prospect. You perhaps don't feel that you quite have your professional persona yet, and are not quite sure how to sell yourself or market yourself to potential employers. So it's important to think about what it is that you do have to offer and focus on all those wonderful skills that you've gained, not just through your formal studies, but through all the other activities that you've done throughout your life, including volunteer work, extracurricular activities, roles of responsibility within your community or within your family, perhaps things that you've done at university. Like, all of these things add to your skill set and are all part of the package that is you as a professional. And think about what your purpose is as a professional. What are you actually wanting to achieve? And make sure that you sort of are aligning that with your values in the organisations that you're approaching. But getting back to, I guess, the historical sense is that we know, for example, in previous recessions or previous times of economic downturn, that when economies and the job market has tightened, that quite often university enrolments or enrolments for further study have gone up. So people will quite often take it as an opportunity to either reskill or to further skill in an area that they're interested in terms of their professional development. Interestingly though, what happened after the global financial crisis, and to give some historical context, I was in this role at Swinburne during the global financial crisis, so I can speak from a little bit of experience as to what we saw actually happening with our students at that time, is that we did have students that had their graduate offers reneged because the organisation had to make large amounts of redundancies and couldn't be seen to be taking on large numbers of graduates to replace the workers whose roles they had just made redundant. But what we also did see is a lot of negotiation. So it might have been, rather than taking X amount of candidates in for full-time roles, they were offered part-time roles. Or some of them had their offers delayed. So rather than the traditional January start, they didn't start till a bit later on in the year. Others were invited to reapply and go straight to the final stages of recruitment for the next round of graduate intakes later on. And what we found is there were still opportunities available, just not in the numbers that we had been used to previously. And another thing that's interesting about the global financial crisis is that with youth unemployment, unlike previous recessions, it did not return to the level that it was at prior to the global financial crisis. And that has sort of stuck around a little bit. And I think it's for a number of factors. And I'm not sort of going to go into those. I'm not an economist or a labour market professional, but from a career development professional, it quite often leads students to needing to think about, rather than those traditional pathways into professional employment, what other avenues that you can take. And it might be, Sean was talking about, gig and freelancing. Some people refer to that as their side hustle, and some of you may have a side hustle that you're already doing to supplement your studies. And so it might be looking at what you can do to supplement that side hustle once your studies are over. And I think the other thing to bear in mind is that you can only engage in the opportunities that are available to you. So the more that you're networking and the more that you are open to the types of opportunities that are available to you, the more likely it is that you're going to find yourself in paid employment. And I guess my last word on this would be, because I'm just conscious of the time, Grace, is persevere, okay? Getting a job is a job. It is a hard slog. It's even a harder slog when you're going through something that is unprecedented like COVID-19, but do not give up. Engage with the resources that are available to help you. I've even heard of students holding job clubs with each other to pep each other up and to keep that sort of momentum and that motivation going. So just persevere. It is likely that you will find employment. It may just not look like what you are ideally hoping for, and it may not happen as quickly as you were hoping.
Thanks, Marianne. That's really, really, really good stuff. And definitely all your facts about side hustles, like so many people being like, yeah, it's like my side thing. And it's like, make that your main thing. If this is the situation where we are in, however unfortunate it may be, like that's such a good opportunity. So, really hopeful message there. So we might pass on now to Olivia, who's going to talk a bit about the same kind of thing, just in the sense of international students and what their opportunities are at the moment. So I will just do a little screen share because we have a little slide to put up.
Okay, hi everybody. I'll just quickly introduce myself. I work in the International Student Advisory and Support team, and I probably send some of the international students lots of emails about various events and activities, and I work very closely in conjunction with the careers team where Marianne and Rebecca are from, and I guess I can see international students individually. I run sort of seminars and events, help you with some connections and networking and things like that. So really there to support you in your work and in your job search as well. And I guess I'm just reiterating a lot of what Marianne will say, but from a slightly different perspective. And we know that it's more challenging for our international students to find employment even in good times. But I've done a lot of research into what makes our international alumni successful. And there's a few messages that come through very regularly from students. And it's very much about being proactive in terms of your personal and professional development whilst you're a student. And even when you are a recent graduate, if you're in that sort of lulled job search mode, you've got to be considering what you can do to build on your strengths and overcome any weaknesses that you might have. So Swinburne has so much on offer, and I don't think students are necessarily aware of all that Swinburne does have. So I encourage you to make an appointment with myself or one of the career advisors in the central office, and they can tailor a development activities that might help you best, I guess, pitch yourself at the opportunities in this competitive job market. So really reach out and see what is there. I also very much want to remind you that international students are special, and special in a really positive way. And I don't want you to forget that, and I want you to be highlighting that in all your job search as well. Australia is an island. A lot of what we do is reaching out to other countries. And I want you as international students to remember you've got what we call the bicultural advantage, and it's much more than being multilingual. You know about the export markets, very many of them Australia wants to actually target. So when you're pitching yourself for jobs, think about what you've got to offer and how you can help Australian organisations grow into new trade markets. Really important for Australia. And we have heard a lot of success stories like this. Just one that springs to mind, there's a company called Red Tractor, and they make, amongst other things, breakfast cereals. Went to a trade show over in Vietnam. With them, they took a Vietnamese-speaking student. Well, that student did all the job search, all the liaison with potential clients and so forth. So that was a really big deal. And that's, think of how that could actually work for you in your job search. The other thing I'd like to stress for all students, but particularly for international students, don't restrict your job search to Melbourne and Victoria or even other capital cities. Rural and remote areas have skills and labour shortages, and we ran a seminar just a couple of weeks ago, and we had 2 students who were engineering and IT graduates who'd both worked in rural areas. They absolutely loved it, and the opportunities there are quite strong. And here's just a couple of quick quotes. This is from the Regional Australia Institute, and they're saying many regions, particularly rural communities, are grappling with a shrinking pool of labour to fill local jobs. And the ABC just last month said regional Australia has 45,000 job vacancies, with more available in some places than before coronavirus. Data shows and backs this up. So everyone needs to be open to that. We very much get stuck in, this is where we live, but we probably in this environment have to be thinking a little bit out of the box. The other thing, particularly for our international students, is don't restrict your job search to Australia. Be open to opportunities wherever you are. You're now a global citizen, as are our local students too. So tap into recruitment opportunities potentially back on your home country or even in a third country. Your home country will really benefit from your international experience. It gives you a little bit of a point of difference, the bicultural advantages that we talked about before. Keep in touch with what's happening with international recruitment cycles. They vary very much from what's happening in Australia. Continue to keep in touch with contacts in your home country and develop these international networks. So don't come here and just put a wall up and say, oh, well, I'm all about Australia. Australia, it's struggling. So see what you can do to make those connections. The other thing is explore companies who've got connections with Australia and see how you might be a network or a conduit to make those opportunities grow. Now, something that I want to announce to you, which is very, very new, and it's just for international students at this point in time, our alumni team has set up a speed mentoring program for our international students, and it's an opportunity to put you in touch with someone who's working in industry and have some discussions with them. So you can register. You'll see up in this top corner, up here, the top right corner, there's a link and you can find out more. So that's especially for international students during this difficult time. We've been able to organise this. So look into it and I can help you if you've got some queries on that. Just very quickly, a couple of things just to highlight. I want to talk to you about Neha. She graduated fairly recently, working as a senior business analyst And while she was a student, she got really active. And I just want to highlight that. And this is relevant for all students. You know, these are the little things that are going to make a big difference. You know, she made an effort to understand the local community. She worked on her comm skills. The part-time job at McDonald's was brilliant for that. She said it was the best English language intensive course she'd done. She joined her professional association, got really involved, and it led to a job. Contrast this with another student, still a strong student, distinction average, but just didn't reach out. You know, really focused on studies, lived with family, didn't work on those comm skills. And after leaving uni, you know, it was more of a struggle because, as we've been saying, employers are really interested in those human skills. So really take that on board, guys. And for everything, I'd just like you to say, even at this time, really dream big. Start small. You're going to be a bit overwhelmed by some of the advice that we give you today. Pick out a couple of things and act now. You know, so dream big, start small, and act now, I guess, is my message.
Thanks, Olivia. That was really good stuff. And thanks for sharing that speed mentoring program for the international students. That looks like definitely a good opportunity. So yeah, I think we might just quickly jump back to Sean. I know a lot of his conversation might roll off of what he was speaking about before, but we might just address more of the economic side of some of these challenges and how that might affect student opportunities in the job markets in this weird time. So I'll pass to you, Sean.
All right, thanks, Grace. Actually, I think it might be worth pivoting from a lot of the conversation. And, you know, I think the fact that human skills was mentioned really can't be underestimated enough. And so, but I'll come back to that in just 1 second. I think that, you know, the historical context is, yes, we're in a recession and a pretty devastating recession as it is. And so a lot of the history will help inform the likely trajectory out of this. But what's also happening is a disruption to the economy at the same time. And that didn't happen in the global financial crisis. It didn't happen in 1991. It hasn't happened for, you know, probably since the Great Depression. So the whole fundamental wiring of the economy is actually changing. And as I mentioned before, it's digital technologies that are driving this change. And, you know, one of the things that is, you know, some of the research that we've done, which you might find of value, is that, so we looked at 3 different sectors of the economy. So the 3 non-government sectors. So the asset sector, so construction, mining, engineering, manufacturing. We looked at the service sector, retail, health, education, transport. And we also looked at the knowledge sector, so ICT, banking, finance, professional services. And all 3 have different levels of digitization. The asset sector has the lowest levels of digitization. The knowledge sector is the most digitally disrupted. And one of the things that we found when we surveyed workers right across the country is that in increasingly digital environments, they value their human skills more, as opposed, and, you know, that, not saying that the functional and technical expertise isn't important. Of course, you need to know something and know how to do something, but increasingly it's your skills of knowing how to work with people, but also understand humans. It's not just about, you know, collaborating, but it's also, you know, it's empathy and curiosity and all of those dimensions that really are essential. And, you know, coming back to that, you know, the recession, but also in a transforming economy, you know, when you get into your work, there's not going to be a solution. There's not going to be, well, you know, where's the manual? How do I deal with this situation? Because this situation hasn't arrived before. It's going to require you to leverage your uniquely human skills, curiosity and risk-taking and you know, figuring out, you know, being a proactive learner. And by learning, I don't necessarily just mean taking a course or in that traditional format. It's like, what do I need to know or need to create knowledge to get over this hurdle that I'm in, or how do I work with my coworkers? And, you know, that's increasingly what's going to happen in workplaces. And so so when you get into the workforce, you really leverage those, what I call your social competencies. So, your emotional, social, collaborative skills, but also your entrepreneurial skills. So decision-making, creativity, imagination, risk-taking, etc. Those two together is really what's going to help you, not just survive, but succeed and thrive in crazy workplaces.
No, definitely. Human skills is the best skills. I love it. Very good points. So, going with this whole where to next vibe, I might throw the discussion to Beck, and she's going to tell us a little bit about the side of the careers employability aspect of this whole discussion and what student resources can offer you guys. So
yeah,
pass on to Beck.
Fantastic. Thanks, Grace. And look, really appreciate the opportunity to be on the panel and really, I guess, contribute to such an important discussion at the moment, because we know that times are tough and students are incredibly stressed and under pressure. And I guess, as Marianne was saying, just want to reiterate that, that's our job, is to be here to help you. So make sure you're accessing your allies and you're getting all of the support that you can through this difficult time. I'm going to, I guess, sort of touch on a lot of what some of the other panellists have said. My role at Swinburne is currently I'm in charge of creating digital employability resources and programs. So I guess very well timed in terms for Swinburne with the lockdown and everyone moving online. We've worked really hard to make sure that we've got a wide range of interactive, personalised digital learning tools for you to be able to actually build the particular skills that you're going to need in this changing workplace. So as Sean was saying, the idea of, being able to really tap into your creativity, entrepreneurship and your resilience and your agency to be able to manage this rapidly changing working environment is so important. As part of, study at Swinburne, we've worked very hard, academic coordinators, to be able to make sure that you have all of these key graduate attributes actually embedded within your course that you're studying. So even if you don't know that you're actually learning a lot of these types of skills, they actually are incorporated into your courses. And we also have some fantastic learning resources at Careers and Employability to help you really further develop some of those sorts of skills. So I guess I'm going to talk about ways that you can practically build those skills, and also how to be able to really, I guess, articulate those skills to employers. So I might just share my screen for a moment. So for those of you that aren't aware, this is our Swin Employ website, and this is where we've got a huge range of fantastic resources for students and graduates to be able to use to build their employability. I'll talk about a couple of these resources today with you. The first one I really want to highlight is our new Career Start program. Now this is really, I guess, designed to be able to help you to build all of the key employability skills that you're going to need to be successful. So through from really starting to understand what your skills and values are, through to understanding about, what are the career options for your particular area of study, job search strategies, and then taking you through to actually how to apply, perform an interview, and then how can you really successfully adjust to being in the workplace. So we've tried really hard to curate a lot of content, and we've also got some great AI tools in here. So for example, you can get immediate feedback on your resume, benchmarked against other Swinburne students and also globally as well. And we also have that mock interview program. We've got a LinkedIn assessment tool as well. So lots of really fantastic things to help you when you need help. So that may be in the middle of the night after you've finished an assignment, you've got some time to focus on your career. Whenever you need it, it is here. So I really encourage people to be able to work through some of these learning materials here. We also, as well as part of these learning materials, have incorporated really relevant information for, I guess, the changing nature of work. So, for example, we've got some great resources on how to be able to perform online interviews. So we're finding that a lot of employers are now changing the way that they're recruiting talent. We've also got a lot of information here about how to build some of those key personal skills. So as Sean was saying, resilience, we have self-assessment tools so that you can check how resilient you are, and it can develop strategies for you to build some of those sorts of resilient skills. So really important to be able to have a look and to learn about, how to be able to manage online meetings, how to survive, I guess, in a more sort of digitally connected world. So that's, I guess, the first program I was really keen to be able to highlight to you all. The next one is our Swinburne Emerging Leader program. Now, this is really a fantastic, I think, program to be able to really support students through this uncertain time. So this program is a great way to be able to have a lot of your extracurricular activities that you might be doing, or some of the key learning that you're doing as part of your academic study, really recognised, and helps you to be able to really talk about that to employers. So there's a range of different awards that you're able to complete. Excitingly, once you complete those awards, it actually goes on your official transcript. So when you graduate, you have that there for employers to see. And as Marianne and Olivia were saying, it's really important to be able to, I guess, try and stand out from the crowd in this competitive market. So this is a great way to be able to really differentiate yourself. And also as well, if you're feeling sort of a little bit lost and you're not quite sure about how to build, your skills and what opportunities, you might like to get involved in, this is a really good structured program to help and to support you going through, the different activities and to learn how you can build those skills. So I really encourage you to use all of the fantastic resources and services that are available for you, and get proactive. Make sure that you're getting in there, you're doing as much as you possibly can. Even if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, get started and access your allies and supports.
Yeah, that's awesome, Beck. One of our first conversations we ever had, just me and you, just Beck mentioned this award, and as a student myself, I had no idea. And it's just all these resources are right there.
Absolutely. And we've got a range of different sort of award categories, including sort of career management. So I've already roped Grace in to apply and get credit for this fantastic session that she's running. But you don't, it's about sort of, celebrating and recognising the things that you're actually already doing as part of your university study. Yeah. So you don't have to be an exceptional leader to be able to qualify and get recognised in this program. It's about really helping you to be able to identify your skill gaps, supporting you to build those skills, and then helping you to be able to celebrate and share those skills with employers.
Yeah, just a great opportunity. Heaps of resources. It's all out there just waiting for students to get involved. Did you have anything to add in terms of professional placement?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Grace. Unfortunately, we wanted to have a member of our professional placements team here with us, but I guess, it's really important, again, as the others were saying, to think about opportunities to build your work experience while you're at Swinburne. So Swinburne is famous for our WIL, or our work integrated learning opportunity. So I really encourage you to explore placements and internships as part of your study at Swinburne, but also be thinking about, capstone units, any sort of assignments that you might be doing that are perhaps, based on real life situations. So really trying as much as you can to be able to use your time at Swinburne to also build your professional experience.
Thanks, Beck. That's awesome. I might hand over to Felicity now. She's been waiting patiently this whole time. She's going to share with us a bit about the Young Workers Centre and how they can help in this whole navigating this whole new workforce, looking for career, looking for jobs, and whatnot. So over to you, Felicity.
Thanks, Grace. So great to be with you all here today, and thanks for the invite as well. I might just start off quickly by telling you a bit about myself, because I think it's probably quite relevant to the conversations that we're having today. So you can probably pick it up on the accent already. I'm originally from the UK, and actually only moved here to Australia once I graduated from university. So I graduated in 2012 from a university in the UK and moved pretty much straight over here to Melbourne. I didn't go to my graduation ceremony, much to my mum's horror. She hasn't got the photo. But I found myself in Melbourne because my partner lived here and who I'd met overseas. And I was this brand new graduate in a country that I'd never visited before. I knew one person at that point. and had to kind of work out where I was heading and what I was going to do for work in the long term. So I did all the things I guess that people are mentioning today, and tried to reach out to as many different organizations as possible, sent so many emails, and I guess did things that I felt uncomfortable doing, but knew that I was only going to get comfortable by doing the uncomfortable. Did volunteering, internships, and so on, so that I could kind of build my networks in the areas that I'd studied in. And I acknowledged that I was pretty privileged. I'd got a good university education. I'd come from an English-speaking country, so that made it all a whole heap easier for me. And I wasn't trying to get a job during a pandemic, but nevertheless, like, it was at times tough. And I just thought it'd be worth telling my story, because after about a year of doing all of those things and holding down a part-time job to kind of make sure that I could put money on my Mikey to get to interviews, I got my job at Trades Hall, which is where the Young Workers Centre is based, and I've been there now for almost 7 years in February. So a bit of a hopeful story, I guess. It was, pretty hard going to start with, but by doing all the things that people have mentioned today, it does pay off, and I'm really fortunate to be working with so many young people these days in a job that I love, and in a good job, a good secure job as well. So I'm really lucky in that sense. And in terms of the Young Workers Centre, we are a one-stop shop for any young workers in Victoria who want to learn more about their rights at work, or who need assistance in resolving workplace issues, or you just simply have questions and need advice about something that's happening at work. So we have a team that goes out to schools, TAFEs, universities, and delivers your rights at work training. But we also have a team of lawyers and staff members who can answer your questions and empower you to take action if needed to resolve any workplace issues as well. We know that young workers are, particularly vulnerable in the workplace. We do get so many, unfortunately, young workers reaching out to us who are experiencing wage theft, which is when you're not paid minimum wage, or bullying or harassment at work, or unsafe workplaces. But by speaking up, they're able to do something about it, and come together and join together with other young workers to, I guess, seek justice and make their workplaces and their communities better as well. And I just told my story about how I managed to kind of get my head down and managed to get the job that I love doing today. Part of the reason I think I was able to do that was because at the same time I had a good part-time job that I knew I was going to get a certain number of hours per week. I knew what I was getting paid, a living wage that enabled me to buy clothes for interviews and all that sort of stuff. And I would just say, like, this all the stuff that I'm talking about today relates to any future job you have. But if you are in work at the moment and it's maybe not as maybe something doesn't seem quite right to you, and reach out to us as well, and we're able to give you advice and help you in those situations to make, I guess, everything else in your life a little bit easier as well. If those problems at work are solved, it can play, can be a big pressure on you, especially as you're trying to finish degrees and looking for jobs, and you could do without dodgy stuff happening at work too. And so I would just say part of the union movement as well. So reach out to the Young Workers Centre or the union movement. And if you ever have any questions about things at work, there is a union for every type of worker. And once I've finished speaking, I'll drop lots of links into the chat section so you can go and do some reading. But basically, there's a union for every type of worker, no matter the industry you're in or the type of work you're doing, and they're a really good resource to have in your corner if you do need a contract looking over, or you've got questions about pay, or you need someone to go into a meeting with management as a support person. I would just finally say if you think something's not quite right at work, and whether it's now or in 10 years' time, reach out sooner rather than later, because the bigger the problem gets, the harder it is to solve.
Definitely. Thanks, Felicity. I mean, we've all had those jobs that are just a bit like, oh, is that correct? So definitely, like, Young Workers Centre, great resource. So thank you for sharing. So I guess going with this kind of sentiment, I might throw to Marianne, and we might just have a talk about what students can do, like, to give themselves the best opportunity and make sure they're on the best foot forward, approaching getting a job and securing employment. So
yeah, thanks, Grace. Look, there's lots of things that you can do, but I think Olivia said it well, as you know, is think big, but act small and act now. So some of the things that, you know, ideas that you're going to be given in terms of the things that you can do to help yourself find employment, it's not feasible to do all of them. And it's certainly not feasible to do all of them at once whilst you're completing your degree. So take a few that you think are going to work for you, be strategic about it, and invest your time wisely. One thing that I would say, that one of the first things that we talk to students about is not using the static approach when applying for jobs. So not just sort of sitting on Seek or Indeed or Jora or, you know, wherever it might be, and applying for anything and everything. And that can be something that happens when you are desperate to look for work, and I understand that. But quality over quantity is always going to yield better results when it comes to job applications. So spending the time to really target your application and really market yourself into a particular role for each and every one that you send out is a worthwhile investment in terms of time, rather than sending out hundreds and hundreds and wondering why you're getting no response. So one of the first things that I would do is think about the way that you approach your job search and what you are doing as part of that job search. So are you targeting your resume? Are you targeting your cover letter? Are you making contact with the organisation first to introduce yourself and ask them some questions? One of the common pet hates that I hear from students is that a lot of the job ads ask for experience, and it's really difficult to get experience when you don't have the experience that you need in order to get the job, to get the experience. So one of the things that I suggest is calling the employer and asking whether or not they'll accept your application given that you don't have the required experience, and then telling them about all the things and the great qualities and skills that you do have. And 9 times out of 10, students that have done that have told me that the employers have said, yep, please do send your application. We'll still accept it. We'll have a look at it. And some of them have gone through to interview with that. So remembering that the job ad is a bit like a kid writing out a Christmas list for Santa. It's everything that they would like. And sometimes they're not very realistic in that either. So it's definitely worthwhile having those conversations. The other thing that you really need to do is think about how you're going to tap into that hidden job market. So who's in your network? Who can you talk to? Who can you reach out to on LinkedIn? Are you using LinkedIn? Have you just plonked your profile on there and are hoping that somebody will see it? Or are you being active on there? Are you participating? Have you joined a professional association? And again, are you actually participating in that association? Are you going along to online networking events? Are you engaging with their resources? Beck's put some links up to some of the excellent digital resources, and there's lots and lots of tips and ideas of things that you can be doing in there as well. Volunteering to get experience is still very much happening online. There are lots of ways to maybe find part-time or casual work. I know everything has been very, very tricky at the moment with COVID-19. So not sort of taking away from that. I just want to, Olivia made some points as well about looking internationally. And during this time, I know a couple of people who've actually been successful in securing international jobs and then have negotiated to do those roles virtually here from Australia. There are opportunities available, and with this digital disruption also comes opportunities. And I do know of people who have done that during this time. So thinking of ways that you can make it work for you as well. Side hustles, gigs, freelancing, thinking about your talents and how you might be able to utilize those. using all the avenues at your disposal, but also being quite strategic in the way that you're doing them, and spending the time on them that they deserve. Tap into the services that are available with you. Book in for a careers consultation and speak to a career advisor about a job search plan for you. So what are some activities that might work for you to achieve the goals that you're wanting to achieve? The other thing that I often suggest to students that they do as well is, if we're talking about a hidden job market and we're talking about contacting employers, is really start off thinking about the types of employers that you would like to work for, and then brainstorming all the organisations that have connections to that type of work, that then support the type of work that they do, and then coming up with a list of employers to contact. Get your elevator pitch ready. Know what you're going to say when you make those phone calls and how you're going to introduce yourself. Asking for information and about opportunities is a much more effective way than asking for a job, and will quite often lead to those sort of opportunities down the track as well. There's some excellent digital resources on Swin Employ about approaching employers, about doing informational interviews, about getting your elevator pitch ready. The other thing I would say is be confident in what you have to offer as well. A lot of the times that I work with students, they're not confident in what they actually have to offer an employer. So I know that quite often the feeling is that you lack the professional experience, but don't forget that you have a whole host of skills and knowledge that you do have to offer an employer, and be confident in what that is that you have to offer. And my last point, there's so much I could say, so I'm trying to put lots of information really quickly, is remember as well that when employers are taking on graduates or taking on people new to a profession, they're not taking you on expecting you to be an expert from day one. That is completely unrealistic. What they are taking you on based on is your potential. So what you need to demonstrate through the recruitment process is that you have the potential to become a very productive professional in your chosen field, not that you are already one necessarily.
Yeah, thanks, Marianne. That's perfect. And I think what you were saying about, reaching out to businesses and reaching out to employers and creating those relationships really taps into what Sean was saying earlier about people want to hire people. I think that's a really important fact to remember, and people aren't just looking for a robot to do some work. I think that's a really, really human advantage.
Research shows as well that employers put a job ad, it's their last resort. It's because they don't already know somebody in their network, or know of somebody who might know someone, or have had someone approach them directly that could do the role. Yeah. It's time consuming, it's costly, and they're not guaranteed to get good results by putting an ad online either. Yeah, so exactly. That's their last port of call.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a good point. All right, just wrapping up quickly before we jump into some questions, I'll just hand over to Felicity. And by the way, while this is all happening, I'm sure everyone can see Rebecca and Olivia and Felicity have just popped in some really good resources in the chat. And there are some questions that we will get to in just a second. So Felicity is going to share with us now some do's and don'ts when seeking employment. And things to look out for when seeking jobs regarding bosses and employers. So over to you, Felicity.
Thank you. I'll just, I guess, wrap up quickly by saying that, these times are really tough right now, but that shouldn't be an excuse for any employer to exploit workers. And we all need that foundation of a good, secure job to get by and put food on the table and pay our bills. And so no matter what, we shouldn't be exploited or abused at work, and we should be able to get to work and come home safely and get paid a fair day's wage as well. So just a few things to look out for when you're in those final stages and about to get a job. You make sure you get a contract. So I know it sounds so simple, but so many people come to us with issues down the track who don't have any documentation about their employment, and that makes it really hard to resolve those issues. So the more paperwork and documentation, the better, So make sure you get a written contract from the person who outlines, how much you're going to get paid, what you're going to be doing day to day, and those sort of conditions are outlined in terms of what you're entitled to. Really important as well that you get paid for any training, that you get paid for all the hours you work as well. So make sure you're receiving your pay slips too. You're meant to receive your pay slips within 24 hours of being paid. And again, it's just another piece of documentation which is really handy if there are, unfortunately, any problems down the line. And I guess that goes for any work in the future, but also any work that you might be doing at the moment. And on that note, I guess it's just important as well to make sure you're checking that you're getting paid the correct rate of pay for the role that you're doing. And I'll put a link in the chat section to the Fair Work Ombudsman's website. They have a pay check calculator, so you can drop in sort of the industry you're looking at as well, and make sure that the job ads or the conversations you're having with prospective employers are on the right track. And I would just say, by coming along to this today, you've probably got a bit of a better understanding about your rights and where you can go to get support and who you can speak out to when you've got any questions. And I think that's all from me.
Awesome. All right, so we might have a quick little question time. If anyone has any questions for someone in particular or just in general. We've had a question here. Do you need part-time or full-time work experience in order to freelance full-time? That's a good question. Marianne looks like she's already ready to answer this question.
No, you don't. I think a lot of people equate full-time experience, full-time work with experience, but there are so many other ways that you can gain experience that are not through full-time work. Depends what kind of freelancing you're talking about in terms of what sort of experience and skills that you might need. If you're talking about working for yourself, then you would need to be able to market yourself to clients and to show them that you have what it's looking for. If you're talking about freelancing for somebody else, again, it's about the skill set that you have to offer and your ability to complete the project or the job that they're employing you to do. It's not necessary to have worked full-time in order to freelance. One doesn't actually correlate necessarily with the other. It's about your ability to do the task for which you're being employed.
Digital platforms, about the ranking you get based on reviews and feedback, in a similar way that Airbnb or Uber, for example. And so I think it's important to, and you'll figure it out when you're on these digital platforms. You might want to potentially underbid yourself just to get a gig, and to get some experience and to get those reviews, because that's actually what drives your ability to get more work on the platforms, is having positive reviews, which and also gradually increasing the type of the length of and the complexity of the gig as well. So start off small and just to get some reviews, but then don't stay at that level. Constantly go for bigger gigs and more complex gigs, because that's how the platform algorithm works in terms of how it ranks you.
Great points. Can I also say Small Business Victoria have got some fantastic resources around, and Felicity, you may be able to talk to sort of some more advice around sort of, whether you need to get an ABN and, tax requirements and all those sorts of things as well. And if you are thinking about planning your business, they've got a great sort of small business template on Business Victoria website as well.
Yeah, I think you guys have said it really well. Any other tips and tricks to jump on that question? Otherwise we'll move on to another one.
I might just jump in and say, not to put a dampener on it all. There's definitely so many great experiences out there and opportunities. But I guess it's just making sure that, for instance, you're not doing, close to full-time work as a freelancer for a company who have just, made somebody else who was an employee redundant, for instance, and making sure that they're not shifting all the burden or the risk of doing business onto you as an individual and trying to shirk off some of that responsibility. So I would just and be aware of like, the additional entitlements that you would get as an employee. You're not getting as a freelancer. You've got to, fund your own annual leave or sick leave and all those sorts of things. And so I just make sure that, you're kind of well aware of the full picture and you've got the right, the setup that's going to work for you long term.
Very good point. Yeah. All right, we've had Emma ask, what are some of the most valuable skills students should be looking to gain when entering the job market? Very important question, Emma. Anyone want to jump in and answer this one?
I can. I know that, so through research of graduate employers in particular, in terms of skills that they're looking for, it's quite often some of the skills that we take for granted. So it's quite often transferable skills, things like communication, problem solving ability, negotiation skills, critical thinking skills. Sean touched on as well those skills that AI systems and computers and digital disruption can't necessarily do. You'll notice pretty much every job ad that you read will ask for good communication skills. What I encourage students to do that are looking for a job in a particular field is to read a large range of job ads for jobs in that field and to take note of the types of skills that they're asking for in those job ads and to see what kind of pattern is developing. And that can be a really good indication of what skills you either need to develop or that you need to focus on in demonstrating that you have in your job application.
Belinda has popped into the chat. She has just said, wouldn't you be glad to have a job if you find out that you're getting slightly less than you should or another condition is not quite where it should be? Is it really worth losing your job over that? Not sure if Felicity, you want to approach this question?
I would just reiterate what I've said before, which is that it's really important that people are getting a living wage and enough to get by and to live a good life and not be struggling week to week or month to month. The first job you get or the second or the third, it's unlikely to be your ideal job, as I think somebody else has said before, but there's no reason once you're in that job as well that you can't speak to your employer 12 months down the track about a pay rise or an alteration of conditions or entitlements. It depends how severe the situation is, of course, and what you're being offered. I think in most cases I would recommend that someone takes an opportunity and then has conversations once they're in the workplace if something is not quite ideal or not quite working.
Can I jump in on that one as well?
Yeah, go ahead.
I think Felicity's made some really good points, but we have employment laws for a reason, and it's really important that we hold employers to account with those. And you may be willing to work for a little bit less. There'll be someone out there who's willing to work for a little bit less than you. You might be willing to lose one condition. There'll be someone out there who's willing to lose one more than you. And so what happens is that everyone starts undercutting everyone, and pretty soon we're in a situation where people are being exploited just in order to have employment. And it's really important that we don't let that happen and we hold employers to account, and that they have to abide by the laws that are in place to protect workers.
Exactly. I think Sean was mentioning earlier as well about that transformation in terms of the labour market. And I think that that's one of the things we need to be particularly mindful of. There are lots of positives around the development of portfolio careers and the gig economy, but there also are those downsides.
My apologies. I need to head off. It's been a nice conversation, and good luck in finding your pathway to work. The one thing I would probably say is if you don't create opportunities, you can't create opportunities. So just get out there and don't be afraid. Right.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks so much for joining us. Awesome. Wow, that's a really good discussion just on what Marianne was speaking on as well. It's our job can never be as good as having rights. And that's a good point to throw in there actually in this discussion. I think we've come to the end at the moment. I think we've gone a little bit over time, but that's fine. We're having a good chat. So I guess, just thank you for everyone for joining in, and had a good turnout, and every one of our panelists have provided some excellent points. So thank you guys for joining to the contribution. Yeah, so thank you everybody. It's been great. We'll see you later.
Thanks, Grace.
Thanks.